Nobody could explain what they saw on that security camera. A massive dog over 100 pounds of muscle and instinct, standing over something tiny, something that shouldn't have been there. And what happened next would leave wildlife experts completely puzzled. But to understand the ending, we need to go back to the very beginning. It was the middle of winter when rangers at a private wildlife reserve in South Africa discovered her. A snow leopard cub, barely 2 days old, alone inside a transport crate that had been improperly handled during relocation. Her mother was gone. The cub was freezing, weak, and barely moving. The veterinarians gave her almost no chance of surviving. Her name would later become Zara. The reserve had no nursing females available and no surrogate in sight. The cub needed warmth immediately. Not tomorrow, not in an hour. Right now. That's when someone made a decision that seemed either incredibly brave or completely reckless. They placed the tiny cub next to Bruno. Bruno was a boerboel, a powerful South African mastiff bred for centuries to guard farms and protect livestock from predators, like lions and leopards. He was 3 years old, enormous, and known around the reserve for his calm and steady temperament. His keeper, a woman named Lena who had raised him since he was a puppy, always said Bruno had an unusual emotional intelligence. Still, he was a dog, and this was a snow leopard cub. Everyone held their breath. Bruno sniffed the cub once. Then he slowly lay down beside her, curling his massive body around the tiny cub like a protective wall. Without hesitation, the cub pressed against his warmth. For a long moment, nobody moved. Over the following weeks, something almost unbelievable began to unfold. Bruno didn't just tolerate Zara. He cared for her. He gently groomed her with his tongue the way a mother cat would. When she was anxious, she kneaded her tiny paws into his fur. When the veterinarians came to check on her, Bruno stayed close, not threatening, but watchful, as if quietly saying, "Be careful with her." Lena documented everything. Watching the footage later was strangely emotional. Not because anything went wrong, but because everything looked so right. A 100-pound dog and a fragile leopard cub curled together like they had always belonged that way. Zara slowly began to grow stronger. She gained weight. She opened her eyes. Soon she was pawing playfully at Bruno's face, something he tolerated with endless patience. By the 3rd week, she was climbing on his back. By 6 weeks, she was ambushing his tail. Bruno never growled, never snapped. He simply accepted her, the way the earth carries a river, without resistance. But then something changed. At 4 months old, Zara bit Bruno. Not playfully. She bit hard enough to draw blood from his ear. Her eyes had gone cold and focused, a look the keepers recognized immediately. Her instincts had awakened. The ancient predator inside her had begun to emerge. Bruno yelped and stepped back, looking toward Lena with what she later described as genuine confusion. It was the first crack in something fragile. The keepers made a difficult decision. Slowly, they began separating them. Short periods apart at first, then longer and longer. As Zara grew older, her wild nature became stronger. It was the responsible choice. But it was also heartbreaking. Bruno would sit near the fence of her enclosure for hours. He didn't bark or whine. He simply waited. Zara, on the other side, would pace. Months passed. Then a year, then 2. Zara grew into one of the most stunning snow leopards the reserve had ever raised. She was powerful, healthy, and increasingly wild in all the ways that mattered. She was being prepared for the life she was truly meant to live. Bruno grew older too. A little gray appeared around his muzzle, but he still patrolled the reserve beside, Lena with the same quiet confidence he had always carried. For more than 18 months, the two had not shared the same enclosure. Then came the day that ended up on the security. Camera footage? The footage? Nobody could explain. During a routine maintenance check, a gate had accidentally been left unlatched. It was a simple human mistake. For about 40 minutes on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, Zara's enclosure was open. The cameras captured her stepping out slowly, cautiously testing the air with those pale, piercing eyes. Then she began to move. Not toward the outer fence, not toward the open wilderness beyond the reserve. Instead, as she walked toward Bruno's area, Bruno was sleeping in the shade near Lena's office when Zara found him. The camera angle wasn't perfect, but what happened next was clear. Zara approached him. Bruno lifted his head. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Zara did something that made the wildlife biologist, reviewing the footage, stop the video and replay it again. She slowly lay down beside him, pressing her fully grown, powerful body against his side. exactly the way she had done when she was a 2-day-old cub. Then she closed her eyes. Bruno lowered his head back onto his paws. They stayed like that for 22 minutes, until Lena found them. Later, Lena said she stood there for a long time before she could bring herself to interrupt them. She had spent years working with animals, but she had never seen anything that moved her the way that moment did. A snow leopard with the strength and freedom to run anywhere had made a different choice. Instead of escaping, she had gone to find the one creature who had kept her warm when she was dying. She hadn't forgotten. That's something we rarely talk about when it comes to animals. We assume love disappears once the need for survival is gone. We assume that once an animal becomes strong and independent, those early bonds no longer matter. But Bruno had taught Zara how to feel safe in the world, during the only moment in her life when that lesson could truly be learned. And 3 years later, when a gate stood open and freedom was only a few steps away, Zara showed that the lesson had never left her. For a little while, she simply went home. And Bruno was right there waiting. Since then, the reserve has reinforced every enclosure latch to make sure the same mistake never happens again.